Education on audio systems for high school band programs, marching band, and indoor percussion ensemble. So this video is about outputs and speakers and communications. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Outputs and speakers. Outputs on a mixer. Most mixers have outputs on them. Some mixers have XLR outputs on them, and some have a speak-on output, and some have a 1/4-inch jack output for headphones. So the mixers with an XLR output usually need to go to an amplifier first to go to a passive speaker, or it can just feed directly into an active speaker before you will have sound. Mixers with a speak-on output usually have an amplifier built inside of itself and can go straight into a passive speaker. The Yamaha TF5 is what we have been using recently. The Yamaha TF5 has 16 Omni outputs. A normal marching band only uses normally 2 to 3 outputs. At Edgewood, we currently use 4 outputs. 2 for stereo and sub, 1 for our center speaker cart, and 1 for our monitor on the sound cart. Most digital boards allow us to choose what we send to these outputs. So you can actually see the outputs right here. So if I'm correct, this is left and that's right, and you can choose what else to send these to. These are the inputs, these are the outputs. Outputs on an audio interface. Dependent on the specific model of the audio interface, you can have multiple outputs. The Scarlett 2i2 has 2 line outputs. So right here. And then the Scarlett 18i20 has 10 line outputs. Imagine this, but times 5. So I would suggest an interface with at least 4 line outputs so you can have 2 stereo outputs. So essentially you can have left and right, aka left, right. And if you had 2 more, left, right. Or you can just use 4 for individual stuff. But then you would be mono and you would not be stereo. Loudspeakers. Loudspeakers are where most of your sound comes from. Most loudspeakers produce frequencies above 100 Hz, but start to drop off once you keep going down in frequency. You should always angle them towards your destination. So this is essentially the main speaker that produces all the volume you want. They come in active and passive, which we'll talk about later. Subwoofers. Subwoofers essentially produce low frequencies. Subwoofers are essentially used to reinforce the low sounds that the loudspeakers have trouble or that can't produce. Subwoofers produce low frequencies. They essentially reinforce the low sounds that the loudspeakers have trouble or that can't produce. So they can be passive and active, which we're going to talk here in a couple seconds. So overview of active and passive speakers. So most speakers are either active or passive. Active speakers have a built-in amplifier inside of it, which essentially means they need a power cable and an audio cable to operate. So this is an example of an active speaker. Passive speakers don't have an amplifier inside and typically use a speak-on cable to get power and audio signal. They require an outside amplifier in order to work. So this is an example of an amplifier. Passive speakers. These are usually the cheapest speakers because they don't have an amplifier inside. Obviously, these are all amplifiers and not speakers themselves. They also use a speak-on cable to get its audio and power signal from the amplifier to speaker. No, always check your power ratings on the speaker and amp. If you have, let's say, an amplifier that is much more powerful than a speaker, you can easily blow out your speaker. So this is an example of a passive speaker output path. You have your left and right that goes in here, and these send it to your mains. And then we also send it from here to our bottom one, which will control our subs, which then we'll send out to the subs. However, we can also do something where we send from here to our subs. You can do that. as well. Active speakers. Active speakers are more expensive due to the amplifier inside. They don't require an outside amplifier. Typically, they have a power port, can be a normal power cable, and or a PowerCon cable, which is essentially a speak-on cable with a white side and a blue side, and different way to plug in. And an audio port can be an XLR or a quarter-inch jack. This is an example of an XLR and quarter-inch jack. Essentially, you can plug in an XLR or a quarter-inch into there. Some speakers allow you to daisy chain power via PowerCon and audio, making it simpler. This is, for speakers that have maybe multiple of these on top of each other. Here's the speaker path 1, so this is how we can do it. Assuming these are all active speakers, we can just do this. We can also do something like this in some cases. This is an example of daisy chaining. Communications. This is a next big section, and it's a lot more experimental than the rest. Essentially, this section is about wireless communications outside of wireless microphones. This section is specifically about how to control soundboards and or software wirelessly. Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi allows us to control multiple aspects of our audio rig. For example, I am able to sit in the press box and control the mixer board and main stage 3 and solve all the problems that happen wirelessly. Most Wi-Fi networks operate around a 2.4 gigahertz range or a 5 gigahertz range. Essentially, one's higher than the other. 2.4 has more range, but 5 does not have as much range. But there's also slightly less in that area, so it might be easier to run on 5 compared to here, or vice versa. I definitely would suggest getting a Wi-Fi controllable system, as you are not allowed on the floor for most indoor percussion contests, and it allows you to fix most audio problems without being right there, unless it's a physical problem. So I really would suggest it. Controlling mixers wirelessly. For some mixers, if you plug the network port into a router, you'll be able to wirelessly control it. The Yamaha TF series mixers have Stage Mix. The Behringer X32 has X32 Mix. Some features are not available on the app, but you'll still be able to do the basics, such as panning, EQing, and moving the faders. So it allows you to essentially control this with that. Very useful. If you use MainStage 3, you are able to control the software in many different ways. If you can connect your computer to it and screen share, allowing you to be able to adjust settings on MainStage wirelessly. This is what a bunch of drum corps do. They'll have their audio rig, and then they'll have a person on the side monitoring the MainStage rig. You can also connect an iPad to MainStage 3 via Logic Remote. This allows you to trigger samples, play notes, adjust volumes, and adjust multiple other settings as well. Dante. Dante is a rather newer thing, definitely. Dante allows for many things. For example, you can wirelessly send inputs and outputs through Wi-Fi at insanely fast speeds to hardware. This is what the actual Boston Crusaders did when I went to one of their camps. This could be used by sending audio from the electronics in the front ensemble wirelessly to the mixer. Audinate has free certifications and training on Dante. Audinate is the company that made Dante, essentially, and I suggest getting certified. And it's free, like I said, so there's no sense in not. This is the end of the section and video. Thank you for watching. And once again, if you have any questions, please reach out to buellaudio@gmail.com. Thank you.